Hi everybody, I hope you can hear me. So, welcome to today's January 2021 meetup. First meetup this year. As usual, this meetup is presented to you by .NET Devs AT. First, thank you all for joining today. And yeah, what is .NET Devs AT? So we are a non-profit organization for sharing knowledge about .NET technology in Austria. We have a website, we are on Twitter, we are on Twitch as you currently seeing it. All our streams are going up on our YouTube channel, and we have also a Slack channel to help each other out. I'll post quickly all the links in the chat. There you can follow us. Yeah, I also have to thanks to our sponsors. We have a new one, so brand new is OGS Software Services, an Austrian IT service company. Thanks for the sponsoring for the whole year. And also thanks to Tieto Every and Rubicon for sponsoring us. You're also getting sponsored by JetBrains. For each meetup, we have one JetBrains product license for 12 months to give away. Simply at the end of the meetup, there will be a feedback form, and fill out the details, and then you're part of the raffle to get one of the license per month. Good. Quickly before the talk, some news from the community. So we are part of the .NET Foundation virtual user group. It's a collection of user groups all over the world. They're doing now virtual meetups. So if you want to join other virtual meetups, there you find a lot of them. Quick, the links for that also in the chat. And then we have some events upcoming in Austria that could be interesting for you. First, Microsoft is still running their cloud transformation workshops. These are free workshops for different cloud topics. And I don't have the link at the moment. And the second one is our friends from the Power Platform and Office 365 have a virtual Power Platform bootcamp on February the 19th, where you can, it's also free, a whole day about the Power Platform. Perhaps this is interesting for you. Good. And we are already done with the intro, and now the talk of today is the introduction to the open source Uno platform for cross-platform development by the CTO of Uno, Jerome Laban. And now it's your stage, Jerome.
Excellent. Thanks very much. So hi everyone. Thank you for joining me for this user group. I'm Jerome Laban, the CTO of the Uno Platform. So the open source project Uno Platform. So I'll be talking to you today about the open source project itself and how to work with it, why we did it, where we're going with this, and any kind of other questions that you may have. So I'm monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer all those as we go. So what's the Uno platform? Well, the Uno platform is about making WinUI build apps to run natively on mobile, desktop, and web where WinUI doesn't run. So it's all about creating your application and reusing your knowledge about WinUI. So when we're talking WinUI, we're talking C# plus XAML running on the web, on desktop, on mobile devices, and reusing all your skills. And you can see on that chart here, we've been busy. And Uno started way back in 2013. When at the time we were developing applications for for Windows Phone 7 series, it was called at the time, and we were developing all those applications for Windows specifically, and our customers came to us and said, well, you're doing applications for Windows. Why could you help us do applications for Android and iOS? And we gave it a try. So at the time, Mono was there, was available. I think it was Mono Touch. Or Xamarin just started, maybe. I don't recall exactly the details. But the idea is that we wanted to reuse the skills of the company that's behind the Uno platform, Inventive, that was doing all those applications, to reuse those skills of the developers, designers, QA integrators, and things like that, and positions like that to just reuse what they know and go over to iOS and Android. And we did many iterations of that concept, and happened to have something that started to work quite well on iOS and Android. And then WebAssembly came around. And we decided to open source the support for Uno, because we wanted to enable developers to do more with what they know. So if they have a WPF or Silverlight application or Windows application, to see if they could port and use what the Uno platform is able to do, and go to other platforms. So we've done many things, and I'll go through a bit of those during this talk. And we're now at Uno 3.4, so we're going pretty fast. We made quite a bit of releases during 2020, and we don't intend to stop during 2021. So it's full open source, Apache too, so you can use it whenever you want. You can take it and do whatever you want with it. And if there's something that needs to be done differently, we can talk about that afterwards. But we're basically financing ourselves using the Red Hat model. So you come to us, and we can make arrangements for the backlogs of the Uno platform to work better for you when using the Uno platform. So what is it, in technical terms? The Uno platform is all about your application running on Windows, first, and then developing using the tooling that Microsoft has been providing for many years now, like XAML IntelliSense, C#, edit and continue, or hot reload now. I don't know exactly how it's called anymore, but they changed the terms quite a bit of time. But you got all the C# goodies that are integrated into Visual Studio, and the debugging techniques that are available, integration with WSL if you want to do Linux stuff. And the idea is that WinUI is present on Windows, and that's the original one from Microsoft. So that's the UI framework that Microsoft provides to draw some UI on the screen. And then what we did is basically take the whole API set of WinUI and WinRT, which is the new iteration of the Win32 APIs that give access to many things that the system provides, and allows you to reuse the code that you've developed on Windows and port it over to many other platforms. So we're talking the browser, so using .NET 5 and up. So you basically develop your application using .NET, and then WinUI on the top, and you're going to be able to see your application running in the browser. Same thing for macOS and iOS. So developing for that platform and running on that platform. Same thing for Android. And the last one that we've recently announced at our UnoConf last August, it's the support for Linux. And along with that, there's also Windows 7. I won't talk about that one, but if you're interested, just let me know. And the idea is that you don't need to know. The promise of Uno is that you don't need to know what platform you're running on. You're basically relying on APIs that Uno provides, and if they're implemented, and most of those, many of those are implemented in some command scenarios. You're going to be able to just use that code, untouched, and will run on those platforms. So of course, sometimes there are things that may not be available. So for instance, if you're running on the browser, in the browser you can't do anything that the browser will let you do, and not anything else. But in the same way that a JavaScript application won't do anything that would break the machine underneath. So that's the kind of things that need to be talked about. Same thing for iOS and Android in many cases. So that's the idea. So if we dive into a little bit more of the structure, so on Windows there's only UWP. On the browser, we're basically relying on the code that you're developing relies on your relies directly on C#, and then underneath there's going to be platform-specific renderers, backends that will allow for the application to display something or do something. So it depends on if it's UI code or non-UI code. So we're going to be talking about those two in a moment. So on the browser, we're talking about, let's say, if you're familiar with XAML, when you're if it is WPF, Silverlight, or UWP XAML, it doesn't matter that much specifically. Let's say you're rendering a text block, for instance. That text block is going to be rendered differently on each and every platform depending on that. So we're relying on Mono or .NET 5 depending on the targets that are used. But if you go on, let's say, iOS, macOS, and Android, we're going to be relying on Xamarin Classic. There's no Xamarin Forms there. We're talking about Xamarin Forms Classic, so the bare minimum binding APIs that are provided by Xamarin. And underneath is going to be either Mono. So that diagram needs we're making it progress when we're talking about the browser now. It's not Mono anymore, but it's going to be .NET 5. So the whole API that is provided to align everything. And we're expecting that .NET 6 is going to be improving that landscape significantly. So there's not going to be any difference in the future. So how does it work? Underlyingly, we're talking about Uno implementing the API surface of UWP and WinUI. So UWP, when we say UWP, we're not talking about the container mode or the sandbox. We're just talking about the APIs. So that means that if a system provides you full access to it, we're not going to prevent anything from that. So if you're running on Linux, you're going to get access to the full system. And if you're in a browser, you're going to get access to parts of that depending on what we've implemented. And so for the UI parts, we're talking about implementation of stack panel, grid, text block, pivot bindings, many other controls that Microsoft are developing and are developing in WinUI 2.5 and 3. So 2.5, recently we've added support for the info bar control, kind of a pop-up that appears at the bottom. So it's something that we're doing it because we're implementing the API surface of UWP and WinUI. That means that any piece of code that uses WinUI can be recompiled on top of Uno without changing the code, and the behavior is hopefully the same depending on what the library the underlying library uses. Another part that's interesting, and so that there's the UI part, but there's also the non-UI part, and as we provide the whole Surface API, so some of the APIs are implemented, some are not. So for those that are implemented, let's say, for instance, file access, geolocation, sensors, and others, you basically just have to learn one API. So if you want to know the location of the device, you can use geolocation, and that API is we've implemented the system access underneath. So for instance, if you're on Android, it's going to go through whatever Android provides for geolocation. Same thing for sensors and iOS and sensors and other types of platform support. So we have not implemented everything, of course. WinUI and WinRT are extremely large. We're talking, I think, the last count, I think it was something like 15,000 APIs. So that's quite a bit of APIs, and that's why open sourcing Uno was of such a big interest. Because we may not have an immediate interest in implementing some APIs, but you may have an interest in those APIs. So for instance, if we have not developed, let's say, the Bluetooth APIs, well, maybe that's something that is of interest to you because you have an application that uses that. It's definitely something that can be contributed to Uno and that everyone would benefit from. So that's the kind of things that we're looking at in terms of open sourcing and giving access to all the non-UI APIs. Same thing goes for UI APIs. With regards to reusing existing libraries, any .NET Standard 2 and 5 libraries do work out of the box using Uno. Depending on if the .NET Standard library does something that is really supported for all platforms, but generally it does work properly. So JSON.NET and any other kind of libraries will work properly. Prism is also supported, and because we are implementing the API support, the API surface of WinRT and WinUI, that means that libraries that do have support for WinUI also have are also compatible with WinUI. The only thing that is needed is to recompile them to Uno, and that's what we did for many of those. So we contributed the implementation for Uno and WinUI for Prism. Same thing for the Windows Community Toolkit. We have a set of packages for that. Same thing for Reactive UI and MVVM Toolkit, RX.NET, and other libraries like that. Even the latest version of the Community Toolkit, which has a new MVVM framework, is also compatible with Uno. And it's going to be evolving quite significantly in the future. With regards to how Uno maps controls or APIs down to what the system provides, this is a kind of a mapping between the two. So let's say you have a text block on Windows or in your XAML. That text block is going to be translated over to a UI label on iOS, a text view on Android, an HTML paragraph on WebAssembly, and to pixel draw on Canvas on Skia. Same goes for platform API. So the setting storage is used. Let's say, for instance, if you have a login page, and on that login page you want to, let's say, store the email of the user, so you don't have to retype it every time the user launches the app. Then you're going to be using the setting storage, and that is mapping to NS user defaults for iOS, shared preferences, IndexedDB, and other types of features depending on the platform. So you don't have to learn all those platforms, and just learn about that one API that's available on from UWP and that Uno implements. So without talking more, I'm going to be doing a hands-on demo so that you can see what I mean by developing on the Uno platform. So this is basically what a Uno app looks like, and the entry point for getting to Uno is through the extensions. So if you want to start an application using Uno, you basically go to the extensions for Visual Studio, and then you go to online and then search for Uno, and you'll get the set of templates and different templates for different types of projects that are compatible with Uno. And for that iteration, you get two sets of templates. The first one, you get actually two templates. You're going to get one for creating a full Uno application, so what we're calling a cross-platform Uno app. And the second one is going to be a cross-platform library. So this is a full Uno app that you're going to get that I have here on the right. And then the cross-platform library is if you want to create a let's say a user control library or anything that uses platform APIs that are through Uno or using, let's say, for sharing UI. So you have an important control that needs to be reused across projects. That would be one of the things that you do with the cross-platform library. You can, of course, create NuGet packages off of those, which is quite interesting. And Uno is built on this kind of template. So when you've created the application, your application is going to be looking like that. your solution is going to be looking like that. So there's two parts. The first one is a platform folder, which contains all the platforms that are targetable by Uno. For now, we are only we're adding everything. There's no options for that yet. It's something that we're looking at because we were actually adding quite a few platforms, so that makes quite a few of those. And you may not be interested in all those platforms, so it's something that we're definitely going to be looking at. And there's the shared part. So those platforms are basically empty shells. There's pretty much nothing in it. So let's say the UWP project, there's assets, there's a package manifest, and a few other things that are just structure related, but not code. Same thing for, let's say, macOS. There's a main, and that's it. There's nothing else. And the rest is assets and resources that are specific to that platform. And the other platforms are pretty much behaving the same way. Now, on the shared project, we're using that feature because of the performance aspect of that, but that's something that we can discuss afterwards. And the idea here is that that project is referenced, so it's a list of files, and it is referenced in all those projects here. So for instance, if I go to Android, I'm going to be seeing that in references, I can find the demo UI shared files that is referenced. That project is referenced in all the heads that are available here. I see there's a question about HTML paragraph. HTML paragraph is just a P tag. That's what it is. So it's just about paragraphs showing text on the screen. But I'm going to be showing that in a few minutes, so you can see what I'm talking about with regards to translating over to the actual content there. So when we're looking at a demo application like that, so inside of that, you're going to get the different assets that are not there for now for the default demo. You get localization included here, so you can have your resource files completely shared between platforms. You don't need to do anything to each individual platforms for resources. So that's pretty cool. So you don't spend multiple cycles translating multiple times. And then you got the standard XAML that's going to be provided by a Windows UI, Windows XAML application. So what happens is that if you launch your application here, basically that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start that application, and we're going to be doing the flow of development that you would find when developing an application with Uno. And same thing goes with an application on. So I have to select x86. So that's something that we fixed in Uno 3.5. It's going to be released soon, so you don't have to switch that one. So I'm launching my application, and I'm going to be using a feature that Visual Studio provides that has been provided for quite a while, but it was kind of difficult to get to because it wasn't known that much. But it's called XAML hot reload, and you can see here at the top here there's a bar that appears in my application, and it says that hot reload is enabled. And what that means is that you can change the content of your XAML here, and it's going to be updating right away. And as you can see, I didn't change anything. It just updated right away. So that's what Visual Studio provides as part of this. And one of the cool thing, I'm doing that demo every time because it's quite amazing what that it provides it that way. But let's say I'm creating a slider here, and so I'm creating a slider. Oops, sorry, slider. I'm creating a slider and just adding a text block at the top. So let's say with actually no name, it doesn't matter that much. And I'm going to be adding some text, and I'm going to be adding a binding to the value property of the slider that's below. And you can see here that I've updated that, and my UI, my application never stopped, but I could update my content here. So I can see here that it's a bit annoying, but the bar is available here. So what I'm going to be doing is changing something like adding margin here, and you'll put it in the middle. So that's the kind of modification that we can make inside of an application that's running using UWP and XAML hot reload. So that's quite powerful, and it allows you to iterate into your application and making modifications with small details around alignment, and don't have to restart your application every time because it still takes a bit of time. So now what I'm going to be doing is, now that I have developed my application, I'm going to be taking my application and run it, let's say, on WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is about running your C# application directly inside of a browser. And what I'm going to be doing is just start my application like that and let it build and see where that goes. So when building like this, the application is basically creating the tooling is basically creating a small website. And that website is served by IIS Express that's available from Visual Studio. And your browser just opens that up and loads the application. So the idea of this is that the browser will only load up everything when it starts, and then there's not going to be any kind of back and forth to the server when the application is running. So this is the same application that I just developed before, and you can see that it behaves the same way. And let's say that I want to, on the web, I want to see where that goes. If I change let's say the background, that I say that it's actually red. So I can change the background and put it to red. So I'm going to be having the same behavior here. And I can change many things, like for instance, if I want to use the navigation view control, for instance, that's another kind of control that's very useful for developing an application and navigating inside of an app. So that's the kind of things that you can test out when running your application. So let's go back a little bit there, and we're going to try one last time with another application, and I'm going to be just removing those two so you can see what I mean. And let's go to, let's say, iOS, for instance. So I'm connected to a Mac directly. So it's so that is running on the Mac that I have next to me, and that application is running there. And I'm going to be basically rebuilding that application and deploy it onto the Mac. And what you will see is that, and that's quite the interesting part of running applications on multiple devices, is that there are subtle differences when running on different targets. And running on an iPhone is quite interesting. And you will see that because of the way the iPhone is structured, you need to adjust a little bit your UI, and that's what happens here. So that's one of the things that happens there. And you see, it doesn't work quite well, because if I want to change that here, it won't do the right thing. So that's the kind of things that when you're changing that content and changing the values here, it will give you another, you can change the padding and have another value there. I'm going to change to an Android devices as well, so you can see that it actually runs on multiple devices. And so that's one of the other things that you can run on multiple platforms and see, does my application behave properly when running on those devices? You can also see that when I deployed on WebAssembly, it was quite fast. The same thing for UWP. But when deploying on iOS and Android, it takes a bit more time. So that's why switching between platforms is quite interesting. And we've seen that with regards to developing for Uno, we're now preferring when developing applications for those targets to use actually Skia or Windows applications, even if we're developing for Uno, and that's quite interesting. So let's see if I can just change again that margin and say put 50, for instance. There you go. So you can see here those two were linked. So my Android app changed and the WebAssembly changed. So if I go back here again and say I want to have a nice green, then that will be updated on both. So I can see that my application is behaving, I can see the differences between the two there. So there you go. So and the reason for the white here is that the device is white themed and that one is dark themed. So that's why there's a difference there. So, and the last one, but not the least, is being able to run for GTK. And when we're talking about GTK is available it's based off of GTK Sharp, and it runs on multiple platforms. And when I run the application like that, it will basically build for GTK Sharp, and it will create a package that is compatible with other platforms. And that package is also compatible with Linux. And I'm not going to be showing that today because it would take a bit more time, but that's not the idea here. But you can do the same thing. So that application you can take and run, you can take and run on Linux directly, and it will work right away. So that's basically the way you can build an application and run all those targets, and you can iterate into your application and get to many interesting things there. I was talking a little bit before about the integration with the ability to have controls running there. So I've selected Android here, but that's one of the things here. So what I've done is I've included the Microsoft toolkit, the Windows Community Toolkit, and it has a radial gouge that's available from there. And that's one of the applications that I can run there. So let's say if I go to GTK and run that application here, what I'm going to get is a radial gouge that's available right from the community toolkit, and you can have your control displaying that kind of controls. There's a wide range of ecosystem that's available with regards to support for additional controls, and we're going to be talking about that afterwards in a few other slides.
Jerome, there was
yes.
one question in the chat. If there is
Right.
an easy way or a way to get the styling of the controls to look like native controls.
Yes. There's the ability to do that. So one of the interesting things about that kind of control is that maybe not that one specifically because it's a custom one, but let's say for instance a button. And the idea of lookless controls, and that's a concept of lookless controls. So when you say, I want to have a button or a text box or a slider or anything like that, that control is going to be using the default templates that are coming from Uno and UWP. So that's the default behavior, and your button is going to look like the same, on all platforms. But because those controls are actually lookless and they're styled to use the default of UWP, that means that you can use also the native styles for those. And there's a way to do that where you can change the default look and feel of the application by changing the default styling or explicitly per control. So you can, let's say, have a button that looks like the native one for Android, and the button next to it that uses the UWP one that has a rounded corner and a video inside, for instance. That's the kind of thing that you can do, a video button. So that's the kind of way you can think about this. But yes, you can definitely choose between the native controls and the platform controls. So there are some ways to choose about that, and one of the controls that needs to have the platform control, the platform way of displaying. Of interacting with the system is the frame control. So for navigating, and for instance, when you're on an iPhone, going back to the previous page, you need to swipe from the left, and that's something that by default Windows does not support. And so there's a way to change that and have the frame use the native way of navigating for an application. So that's kind of things that you can change and alter.
Cool. So as I understood it correctly, you're using the styling capabilities of UWP. As
Exactly.
you normally use styles, you can also create your own default styles. You can simply define default styles per, I think it was, control type.
Exactly. You can change anything, and if you want, I can just show that very quickly. When you go to our Uno controls, there's a you can navigate the Uno UI repository, and there's a file that's called XAML, and you search for styles here. And we have a whole set of styles that are what we call generate native. And let's say you can have the default native button for Android, and that one you can see that it's a button. It's a native button with a bit of things for enabling data binding, but there's also a UI button. There's also checkboxes with bindable checkboxes. There's bindable UI switch for iOS and Android. So same thing goes for all the others, but it's a style. I mean, it's a default XAML style that we changed the control template to be just the native control and not a set of different ways to do that. So is there a theme? I'll go back to that in a few slides. Hang on there. So let me go to that one. I think it's probably one of the few others. So with regards to a few things that Uno supports, there's control templating and data templating, which is very important with larger applications when you want to reuse the behaviors and change and alter the visuals of that. Styling and theming, we support the, light and dark theming with the default behaviors that WinUI provides. We also have conditional XAML that allows for, let's say, if you want to display something specifically for Android or iOS, you have a way to do that, and that it's conditionally compiled into the XAML, so there's no need to do things at runtime to enable that. We also support native control integration where for the platforms that do support it. So let's say for iOS and Android, there's a way, and macOS, there's a way to integrate with the native control, and you can mix and match in the tree. Let's say you want to add an ads control, you can just add that control directly instead of a content control, for instance, and it will display properly as part of the visual tree. Same thing goes for WebAssembly. You can interop with native JavaScript controls and integrate them into the visual tree. We support animations and visual states, state triggers, and others for rich animations. We also have data binding and property inheritance and xbind functions, so that are very useful. If you're coming from WPF, xbind functions may be something that you will be interested in, especially with if you were accustomed to the use of multi-binding. It's something that replaces that or provides similar functionality in WinUI. Shapes and brushes and complex text blocks, that's the kind of things that we're also providing as part of Uno. We also have localization in images, especially with assets added only once. So we're auto retargeting assets based on the conventions that UWP and WinRT support. So let's say if you use .scale 100 and 400 and something like that, they're going to be automatically retargeted for the other devices without you having to do anything. And you localize string only once, as I've shown in the sample application before. Now, with regards to theming, we support Fluent UI. So it's the design guidelines that are provided by Microsoft, and those guidelines are implemented as part of a package that you can add and enable, then add to an Uno application to enable that behavior, because by default Uno provides the UWP styles, so no rounded corners and things like that. That is something that the Fluent UI is going to be providing. And same thing for Material UI. So material guidelines. So we're providing a NuGet package that's called Uno.material that provides all those features features and UI controls and guidelines that are part of the material spec. You can get the sketch for that if you want to develop your application with it, and there's also an application that we've developed to demonstrate that on the store. So I can actually show you that one right away. So if you go to the web and you go to the Uno gallery, so that's the application on that gallery. So I just can probably close that one. So that's the Uno gallery. It's an application that allows you to see what happens when you're using a specific set of controls. So let's say a button, text box, and others, with Material and Fluent enabled visually. So you can see those behaviors there and see. So you can see probably I don't know if it shows up pretty well through the screen sharing, but the rounded corners are there, even if they're small. So that's the kind of things that can be available there. So you got all those buttons and hyperlinks and navigation view and other types of controls that are available as part of Fluent and Material. So it allows you to change and toggle between the two. And there's also light and dark theme changes that you can see here to get get to your updates and view on the two modes. You can also see the XAML that we used to display the controls in the way they were displayed here. So that's the Uno gallery to see what the application is able to do. And on the same side, there's also an application that's called the Uno Playground, and that application we provide to enable developers to test dynamically and with editing their own code in an application that's in the browser. And you can browse the snippets that we have. That let's say if you want to test, let's say an application that has cards and images and rounded corners and things like that, and you can see how that application behaves. And let's say if I go to ViewBox, for instance, I can test a ViewBox here, and I can actually change that text here. So you can see here that the text that is here is actually data bound to some data that's at the back. So if I change that text here, it's gonna update right away immediately because the binding has changed. I can also change that and say if I want that border to be red, if I change that, it's going to be updated right away. So that's the kind of things that you can do with the playground and troubleshoot your application or test what is available there. So another thing that I wanted to show you is when you're developing your application, you can actually see. So if I have a text block here, and there was a question before about what those look like when running the application. So you can actually take the F12 debugging tools from the browser and click the selector here, and you can actually go and select the text, and you can see here that my text block that I had here is now translated over to a P element, which has the text here, and so the text that you see here, but has a style that is automatically generated by Uno, so that you can get the exact same behavior between multiple platforms. So there was a question: can I set the native look and feel for all the applications for the other controls in the app? Yes, there's a way to do that. And we have some documentation about changing that default. It's called a feature configuration. So you can set that at the beginning of your application, and it changes all the controls for iOS and Android, macOS, over to their native styles, so that they use the right behavior, the native behavior implicitly without having you to set anything for that platform. So that's the Uno Playground, and take a look, browse around, and there's even a save snippet feature. So if you have done some amazing XAML and you want to share it to someone else, you can generate an URL that is shareable with others. Okay, so let's continue a little bit. So Uno has been there for quite a while, and we started in 2013. It's been we've been doing lots of things around that, and that's some of the applications that we developed as part of Inventive, the parent company of Uno, and some of those are available publicly on stores, so you can go to our website and take a look at the showcases that we have, and that will show you where to get those applications, and you will have an idea of the possibilities of applications running in the store. So I've just shown the playground. Now let's talk a little bit about native and web. I've shown the application about running on the web, and why would you choose to go on the web? And there are multiple criteria to determine if you want to go to the web or stay on the desktop and mobile. And there's of course the elephant in the room is the deployment model, and that's what we've got a lot of clients coming to us and say, well, I want to go to the web because I don't want to do JavaScript. I have a C# application, but I don't want to have to go through stores that may be imposing restrictions on me that I don't want to have, and I want to be able to deploy at my own pace and not anything else. So that's the kind of things that need to be taken into account. And with regards to JavaScript, I mean, JavaScript is heavily used for the web, but thanks to WebAssembly, that's not the only language now that is available. So lots of things that that need to be taken into account. And with regards to that, WebAssembly has been quite the boom in terms of providing features around that. And without going into many details, WebAssembly is about taking an application and compiling down to some binary format. That's .wasm, and if you take an Uno application, you're going to see a .NET.wasm that's downloaded as part of the startup app of the application. And it pretty much looks like this when decompiled, but it's not very useful. It's kind of like a standard assembly language that you would see if you were to decompile an x86 or x64 binary. I put it there so that it gives you an idea of what that is, but that's pretty much it. So it is actually a compilation target for any language. That's quite similar to x86, ARM, or x64, and many languages are targeting that. I think the last one that I heard about was COBOL. I think was now available to compile on that are available. So lots of new targets are targeting, lots of new languages are targeting the web, and that means that pretty much anything that was that is compilable to a native language, to any language that targets WebAssembly, will be able to take any application and port that over to WebAssembly. So that's pretty amazing to see. And it's supported by all major browsers. We're talking and it's been for quite a while. So Edge as well. So the new Edge and the old Edge, and for mobiles as well. The landscape is evolving quite rapidly recently, but we've seen that Chrome has been changing quite a few of the features with regards to WebAssembly lately. So expect quite a few feature improvements in that domain in the year to come. One of the aspects of WebAssembly that's interesting is that JavaScript is still is not as parallelizable as WebAssembly could be, and it's all about decoding in parallel. And JavaScript parsing is quite complex because when you take one file, you may have a dependency on another file that's not yet been compiled. That's not something that WebAssembly has trouble with, because it's basically a unit that can be compiled, and the best of it, it can be compiled and put to the disk and reloaded afterwards. So it's really about all the performance the performance added to WebAssembly. It's quite interesting. And if you run a UWP application, you can actually see the changes in the compiler running in the back. So if you run your application multiple times, let's say after 10 seconds, then 30 seconds, then after a minute, the performance may change because the compiler is going to go through multiple phases of optimization, and your application may go faster. It's actually the same with JavaScript, but it's actually more visible with WebAssembly. Security is interesting as well. So when you're running an application in WebAssembly, using WebAssembly, it has the same security context of JavaScript. So that means that you can't get out of the box. If you can't get out of the box using JavaScript, you won't be able to get out of the box using WebAssembly. It's the same security context. And this is something that's bundled with browsers, but it's not optional. It's something that's available as this in the same way JavaScript is. And there's nothing to install like Silverlight or a Java applets or Flash or anything like that. It's just available, and that's it. There's no deprecation of any kind that may come anytime soon because of that. Many use cases are fun. AutoCAD and Unity and Emacs have been converted over to WebAssembly, and there's no day that there isn't a new version of an application that was compiled into WebAssembly. And one of my favorite ones is actually the last one. It's Microsoft Windows, and there was a version of that was compiled over to WebAssembly. And what you can see here is that I have a VM running inside of my browser, and it's completely local. And it's Windows 2000 running inside of the browser without having installed anything on my machine. And I can even go and play the most important program of Windows 2000 at the time, and there it works. So that's one of the interesting application. And to show you that there's nothing that's happening in the browser in the browser, and there's nothing that goes to the web when I'm using it. We can go to the network tab, and aside from those binary files that are downloaded, because it's actually the disk is actually on the remote side when getting the default value, so it downloads the files there. But that's pretty much it. When I'm moving my cursor and recreating games and things like that, nothing happens with regards to going to a remote server. So security-wise or privacy-wise, that's interesting because there's everything's local. So that's a quite interesting application there. Even Firefox runs in there and has access to the internet. So it's a quite old version of Firefox, but still there. So if we continue a bit more, we've added support for C#, over to WebAssembly, and the interesting part here is that C# is something that allows you to draw on a canvas in a very efficient way. Whether it's using a standard pixel buffer, so you're basically drawing pixel one by one, or using OpenGL accelerated versions of it. And it's something that we've provided as part of access to the Uno platform on WebAssembly and on the other platforms as well. It's already supported. And to give you an example of what that is, there's an application. You can go to C#-wasm platform.uno, and that will give you an application that allows you to test all the different shaders and features that are provided by C#. So, for instance, that one, filtering, and to show you that I'm not, it's actually not, it's not a bitmap that I'm showing up. If I change the size of that, you can see that the image is actually changing and is being recomputed every time I'm changing the file. So it's a bit slow for now. The reason for this is that we're working with Microsoft to get to the latest version of C# that uses OpenGL. So that one is not using OpenGL yet, but it's coming very, very soon. And that means that it's going to be ultra fast because it's going to be using OpenGL and shaders when running inside of the browser. So Xamarin Reload that I've shown a little bit, I won't go into many details for that one. And there was a question about Xamarin Forms a little bit before. I'm not sure if it was exactly that, but we support something that's called Xamarin Forms WebAssembly renderers. And what that allows you to do is take a Xamarin Forms application. So it's now a little bit more than Xamarin 4.5. We're at 4.8 now, and 5 is coming soon. And what it allows you to do is that if you have a Xamarin Forms application that runs on iOS and Android, you can add a new platform head that allows you to target WebAssembly and your application, depending on what it uses, and to run that application on the web, and reuse the application that you've developed on the application that you've developed on iOS and Android and make it run on the web. So that's something that is available, and it's quite interesting. We're always looking for scenarios that people want to use that feature of Uno. And if you have any kind of request, just let us know and open an issue on the Uno platform GitHub repository. We also have a UI testing framework. So the interesting thing here is that as we're providing a way to do cross-platform development, there's also a need of having cross-platform UI testing. And Uno is developing is actually developed on itself. For itself is using a framework that's called Xamarin Uno.UI testing, Uno.UI test, sorry. And that framework allows for creating one set of UI tests and run them on iOS, Android, and WebAssembly, and make sure that you don't regress in your application. So that's one of the features that is available. And we're looking at in the future of adding macOS or Catalyst, as well as Linux support for UI testing, so that it goes further along with cross-platform UI testing. We also have lots of interesting things for the support for third parties. Infragistics has been creating a set of controls that work on the Uno platform, so you can see gouges, data grids, and other types of charts that are available. So if you can go and take a look at the announcement on our blog post, and go take a look at all those controls that are available. Brian Lagunas has been eager to get feedback from Uno users to understand what people want to do with those controls. So give him a wave if you do use those controls. Now, with regards to the Uno platform future, we're always on the lookout to what WinUI 3 is going to be providing. Microsoft has been working hard, in providing a cross-platform, not cross-platform, a cross UWP and Win32 support for their framework. And the new version of WinUI is going to be desktop compatible and .NET 5 compatible, which means that the one thing that people have been, I'd say, I wouldn't say whining about, but complaining about that much, was the fact that when running in UWP, you're in the sandbox and you can't do much. If you want to go and read and write files on the system, you can't do it, aside from jumping through hoops. And it's something that WPF does pretty well. And WinUI 3 is going to be enabling that soon in the future, or actually in previews already. And you can update that. And Uno is going to be aligning with this. You can already experiment with WinUI 3. With the WinUI 3 API set in Uno, we have two sets of NuGet packages. If you look for Uno, you're going to get Uno.UI for the support for the UWP style API set, and there's Uno.WinUI that goes for the WinUI 3 and up API set. So that's the two APIs, the two sets of packages that target both APIs. So you can test out with WinUI 3, and we're also following the project reunion as well, so that we align with everything, so that you develop your app once and then it will run on UWP, on Windows desktop, and all the other platforms that Windows provides. We're going to be adding more supported controls, so like anything that is already inside of UWP that we have not implemented yet, but also all the controls that are being added regularly to WinUI 2.5 and 6. I don't know exactly when that's going to be released. So we're adding those controls, import them over to Uno, and more platform integrations. When we're talking about that, it's all about with the platforms that we have, making sure that we support, let's say for Linux, having proper access to file save pickers, open file pickers, and things like that, so you don't have to understand how GTK works and everything like that. And the last but not least is, one of the most prominent is performance. It's something that we're working on regularly, and as part of the kind of tracking if the applications are behaving properly, especially on Android and WebAssembly. We're making core updates into Uno to make sure that we're improving the performance, and we're also working with the .NET team with regards to WebAssembly and AOT support. So when you're developing an application using WebAssembly, it runs in two modes. You have the interpreter mode, and that mode can be quite slow, depending on the type of operations that you're doing. Anything that's CPU intensive may be a bit slow. And if you're running using AOT compiled, so taking that WebAssembly and compiling down to taking the .NET assemblies and compiling down to WebAssembly, there's a process that's called AOT, and that process is currently worked on by the .NET team. And we expect that during, let's say, the next 6 months or so, lots of improvements are going to be made there with performance, runtime performance, but as well as improved package size. So making sure that the applications are as small as possible when being deployed to the browser. So that's pretty much it with all this. So if you have any questions, I see that there was any questions there were questions asked.
One
So
question is open.
yes.
Does all the most important APIs like UI, control, styling, animation work on particularly Android and iOS? Are there still some bugs or quirks or unimplemented features? Could you say these main APIs work 80, 90, or work 100% perfectly?
Well, so the as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, the API surface is extremely large. So there may be parts of the APIs that we have not implemented at all. So let's say, for instance, BTLE is not implemented. Bluetooth APIs, video APIs, video capture APIs may not be implemented. Now, with regards to is it implemented at a certain percentage, it really depends. Some of the controls that we have ported over are implemented 100%. Let's say, for instance, the info bar control is implemented at 100% because we took the source from WinUI and ported it over to Uno. So everything's there. Now there may be other controls that may not have been implemented fully, and we have a page that gives the set of implemented and not implemented APIs. And you can also take a look at the code itself. When you're using a control, you can take a look at when you navigate to a control. So I can probably show you that in the application that I've developed here. So for instance, if I go to, let's say, app.xaml here, you will be able to see that there are some APIs that are not implemented. So let's say get deferral here. I don't recall if we have implemented that one. So yes, that one is implemented. So it doesn't say, but there may be some of those that are not implemented. So if we go to, let's say, let's go to application, for instance. If we go to applications, we have not implemented everything from that. And let's say if we go to background activated, and some of those, they're available here. Let's find those. Oh, yeah, I'm on Windows, so that's why it says that. So let's switch to Android. So on UWP, they're all implemented, of course. But let's go to WebAssembly, for instance. So if I go to application, you can see that some of those are tagged as not implemented. So the focus visual kind, we have not implemented yet. So that means if you're trying to use it, it will not do anything. It'll tell you that it may be either an exception or it may be a log message that will tell you if there's something that is not available. And for the list of controls, Sasha in the chat has provided that list of implemented APIs. There's also ways to programmatically know if those APIs are implemented or not using the API information API. That one you can say, is that property implemented or not? And you can switch. You can take that the block that uses those APIs and just jump over without failing. A company which wants to start using Uno to develop mobile app client, it's really important to know what's working, what's not working. Yes, of course, and that's why we actually did that. And let's say it's one of the things that is of importance. You go to you can take your APIs, your application, and take a look at all those APIs that are available, available or not available, depending on what you've been doing. And there's a when you're running in the application, you can know if something has not been implemented. So if I try to use, for instance, the focus visual kind that is available here, if it wants to. Visual Studio will tell me if I can't say that one. So it will tell me that that it may not have been implemented if it was available. So if what was not available. So I'm in a preview here, so I don't know if it does that, but you will have red squiggles that will tell you if that element has not been implemented. That being said, if you see that there's something else that is not available, or you would like, I don't know, if a tool would make sense to, if you have a UWP application and you want to know if Uno provides that and maybe a tool would help. Let us know. That's something that we can definitely take into consideration when migrating. But that's very good feedback when talking about migrating applications to Uno. So that's pretty much it. Was there something else? There was something that maybe last thing that I could show. Let's see. There was a last application maybe that was of interest. We have ported the Windows calculator over to Uno. That's the calculator that Windows has. If you run the application, it basically is the same application that you can see here, and that runs inside of the browser. So it behaves the same way as the original one, and that's quite amazing to see that we could take that code, and some pieces of code of that application are quite old actually. They're dating back from 1993, and they're now running in the browser, and it's quite amazing to see. So take a look, and you can even run that application on your phone. If you search for Uno calculator on the web, it's something that on the stores you're gonna be able to install that, and that's one of the applications that runs on the iPad, and that supports docking on the side, because there's no calculator by default on the iPad. So yeah, that's the kind of applications that are available to run with Uno, and many others that are coming. I see that there was another question. How many people work full-time on Uno? It varies, but if you have that question, just let us know. Let us know. Send us an email at info@platform.uno, where we'll be happy to answer all the questions that you have with regards to the performance of the team and how we work on Uno. So that's it.
Yeah, the performance of the team is performance of Uno. So it was asking if you have some performance numbers or some performance comparison.
No, but when I'm saying performance of the team, I'm saying because if there are many people on the team, then that means that there's going to be some good progress on the project. But the performance of the apps is something else as well. Binding performance, it's comparison is difficult to do because we're not doing the same things with Xamarin Forms. So it's all related to the scenarios that you're getting. So if you have very specific scenarios that you think performance is a problem with, let us know, and we'll definitely work on that if that makes sense. So I've added a page with references, all the things that I've talked about, and you can go also to platform.uno and to the getting started to start on that. And you can also find me on Twitch. I'm live streaming. I'm live streaming the development of the Uno platform every Tuesday. So you come join me if you want to see how we're doing this. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Jerome, for this cool talk and this cool introduction to the Uno platform. Every speaker on our meetup will get a custom coaster with our logo. I will send it to you when I can send again letters to you, because Canada is on the block list for sending letters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, can't send letters. USA, Canada, and 170 other states, I think, are currently blocked for letters sending, at least from Austria. Good. Yeah. Thanks again for being here today with us. Thank you also to you all for joining our meetup today. There's my cursor. Thanks again also to our sponsors, OGS Software and Services, Tieto Every, Rubicon, and JetBrains for the license. So remember, fill out the feedback survey at the end, and you will be part of the raffle of the JetBrains license. If your company want to sponsor us, talk with us. We have some general information on our website about sponsoring. These are suggestions if you have something, we will find a solution. Also, next meetups, we are having plans to have every month a meetup. We're still in contact with various speakers. For the next topic, nothing is yet fixed. When we have them fixated, you will get the meetup.com notification about them. And I'm searching my mouse cursor only. Yeah. What's also always important for us is that we bring you content that's interesting for us. For that, we have a GitHub repo for topic requests. Simply create an issue there, what you think it's interesting, and we will try to handle and try to find a speaker for the topic. So you don't need to give a talk. We only want to know which topics are interesting for you, and then we will look for a speaker. And yeah, also spread the word that we have these meetups. Invite your colleagues to the next one. Invite friends, your customers perhaps. Retweet our announcements with at .NET Devs at the end. Yeah, simply invite everyone that you think has something to do with .NET to our meetups. Again, we are on various platforms, homepage, Twitter, Twitch. The recordings will go up in the next days on YouTube of this talk. To stay up to date there, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Twitch to get notifications also when there's new stuff. And we have the Slack channel where we are helping each other out with our expertise in all things. And yes, here's the last slide. We always want to improve our meetups, and for that we need your feedback. So it would be nice if you quickly fill out this feedback form. This helps us a lot to make the next and future meetups even better for you all. And with that, I wish you a happy rest of the day. For me, it's not so much rest of the day. Jerome has more hours left of the day. And I hope we see us all in the next meetup in February. Bye.